Hello everyone, thank you for tuning in to How to Be Fabulous at 50. We're having a week-long 5 women, 1 a day for 5 days as to how we can all be more and more fabulous as we get older. And that's because I am fed up with what you often see in mainstream media, that women get to a certain age and they're past it and it's all downhill. And frankly, I think that couldn't be further from the truth. So I want to get out there and start giving a different message. And I think, yes, we get older, maybe we get a few extra lines, maybe there's a few grey hairs going on, maybe there's a few extra inches, but actually what we've all got is a huge amount of extra experience, which is really going to stand us in good stead. It's going to help us make decisions, give advice. And as well, what I'm finding, both with myself and lots of other people, we have the whole I don't care attitude, which isn't you don't care about others. You no longer care what other people think. You're not being held back. You're actually not being held back by limiting beliefs. So it's more that you've got the confidence, oh, I fancy doing that. I think I'm going to give it a try. And I don't care what other people think about it. Now, for anyone who doesn't know me, I'm Mary Waring. My company is Wealth for Women, financial advisory service. I'm a financial advisor, financial planner, and a certified coach. This is coinciding with a new program I'm introducing aimed at women exactly this age, 50, 55 plus, who are keen to leap into that next stage of life, but there's something holding them back. Now, that something can be fear, because we're all going to experience fear at something new. Could be they don't know what they want the next stage of life to look like, because if they've spent a lot of time working to other people's priorities, maybe they haven't even thought about that. And the other thing that often holds people back is fear around money. You know, can I afford that? So especially for someone who's looking to reduce hours, there's a whole fear of, well, maybe I can't afford it. So the program looks at what is it that you want to do? We get very clear on that first. We then look at, can you afford it? Because if you can't afford it, well, then actually it's a bit of a dream rather than a plan. And then we look at, okay, what are we going to do now so that you can get started on this? For everyone who's registered on these calls, I'm going to be sending you details of the program, asking you if you'd like a conversation with me, if it's right for you. If it's not, fine, sit back, listen. We've got 5 fantastic women for you to hear who are going to give lots of hints and tips, and hopefully you're going to love it. So today, we're talking to Nikki Williams. Nikki, I've known for a long time. She's an award-winning nutritionist, a leading expert in women's health and hormones, author of It's Not You, It's Your Hormones, website Happy Hormones for Life. I think we're all getting a clue around here. There's a lot about hormones going on. And we're going to talk about what we all need to do to look after our health, to keep us nice and healthy in the future years. So Nikki, welcome to you.
Thank you, Mary. What a lovely introduction.
Thank you. So I love the whole story as to how you got into this. So tell us why you've chosen to go this route about women's health, hormones, etc.
Well, in my early 40s, and this is going back, now I'm in my 50s now, almost mid 50s. So going back a few years now, about 13, 14 years, I was around 41, 42, had a corporate career of many years, and I'd had 2 young children. And I got to sort of after 40, it kind of things started to just go downhill very rapidly. I just felt absolutely exhausted all day long. I felt like I was walking through treacle. I felt like every day was a long to-do list. I wasn't getting any joy. It was just too exhausting and too stressful. And just juggling everything was just so hard. And I'd lost my kind of feeling of who I was. I'd lost my joy. I'd lost My moods were all over the place, so I wasn't very nice to be around. My kids, you know, were getting the brunt of that. So was my husband, and I just had brain fog. I couldn't make decisions. I couldn't work. So I wasn't performing at work. I wasn't performing at home, and I just felt like a bit of a failure, to be honest. And I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know what was happening to me. So I went to my doctor, and I reeled off all these symptoms that I had in my 10-minute appointment, and he just handed me a piece of paper with the words Prozac on it. It was a prescription for antidepressants. And I looked at it and I thought, I knew what that was, but I actually was really surprised. I thought, oh, yeah, really? Am I depressed? Is that it? But underneath, I kind of thought, well, maybe I am, but I kind of knew deep down that it wasn't that. It was something else going on, but I didn't know what, because I didn't know anything back then about my health, my hormones, what I was doing. I was doing all the wrong things without knowing it. And I didn't know what was happening in my own body. So I sat there in my car looking at this prescription in tears going, oh gosh, what do I do now? But for me, I'm so lucky that I had my dad in my life, who was a private doctor who specialized in hormones. At the time, I didn't know what that was, what he did. I don't know. I didn't really understand any of that. So I phoned him up and I said, look, Dad, my doctor wants to put me on these pills. And he said, no, you don't need that. It'll be your hormones. And I said, what do you mean? He goes, well, you're in perimenopause. And I said, peri what? I mean, back then, this was 13, 14 years ago. The word didn't exist back then. But I did hear the word menopause, and I had heard of that. And I thought that happened when you were old. So, which is like my age now. So I said to him, I said, you've got to be joking. What are you talking about? So he had to explain to me what was happening to my hormones. Now I was in my 40s, which I had no clue about, and how to look after them properly. I was doing all the wrong things. I was dieting. I was, over exercising, trying to fit that in as well. I was massively stressed. I was doing all the wrong things. So I was like, a light bulb went on for me. I couldn't believe it, but I still didn't quite believe him. So I made him do some tests on me, because he's my dad. I was like, I didn't really want to believe all that anyway. I was sort of in denial almost. So we did all these tests, and looking at the hormones on paper, I was all over the place. My cortisol was almost flatlined. That's your stress hormone. I had virtually no progesterone, estrogen all over the place, borderline thyroid, which is sort of low levels of thyroid, which wasn't enough for the doctor to look at and say I needed treatment, but enough to make me feel exhausted. So I was eventually convinced, looking at these test results, oh, actually, my dad's right, I need to do something. And I started to make some changes based on his advice, to my diet, to my lifestyle, to my supplements that I actually wasn't taking, but I started to take the right ones. And within a few weeks, the changes were fairly dramatic. My brain fog lifted, my energy came back. I started to see things much more clearly. My mood started to balance out, which was very popular with the kids and the husband. And I started to lose a bit of weight as well, which had been gathering around my middle, that sort of stubborn kind of belly fat that you just can't shift. And I just thought, wow, hang on a minute, this isn't medication, this is just things that I'm doing on a daily basis. Why don't we all know how to deal with this and how to control our hormones and even what's happening to them? So that's when I decided, I just got really nerdy about it, quite obsessed, and started reading everything I could, and thought, no, this is wrong. We need to have this information freely available. Nobody, I was lucky enough to have my dad in my life, but every other woman on the planet didn't have access to that. So I really felt this purpose calling me, that I needed to share this information, because I saw so many women suffering. All my friends were suffering with the similar symptoms, and we weren't even near that menopausal phase yet. So I decided that was it. I gave up my corporate job and retrained for the next 4 years in nutrition and hormones, and then that was in 2014 when I started the Happy Hormones for Life business, and since then we've helped thousands of women.
And actually, isn't it sad, is sad the right word, disgraceful, that the doctor thinks that giving you antidepressants is the answer? That's dreadful, isn't it? When you weren't depressed at all, you had hormone imbalances. And I'm guessing Prozac would actually just put you in a position of being wandering around a bit without any feelings, a bit zombie-like.
Yeah, it tends to kind of numbs you a little bit. And actually, you know, that can be very helpful for some people with depression. I'm not, you know, not
absolutely.
as a
If
medication.
you've got depression,
it's legitimate. But actually, you know, when you're going through perimenopause and menopause, those symptoms can be quite, you know, similar to depression, and the doctors can just feel like that's their first line treatment, when in fact, you know, actually, if you look at balancing the hormones, and unfortunately for the doctors, they've only got medications to kind of dish out. So it's very difficult for them to, so it's either HRT or antidepressants or whatever they've got available, but it is medication. So often you don't need medication. You actually just need to understand what's going on with your hormones and actually know what foods, what lifestyle hacks and what supplements to take that can help you to balance them in the first place. I'm not anti-medication. I'm actually on HRT because part 2 of that story was that I hit my early 50s and, you know, was doing really nicely, thinking, you know, I've got this sussed. And then my early 50s kind of hit me with the real menopausal bit that came along later. I was having horrendous night sweats. I couldn't sleep. I was being woken up every half an hour with a sweat. And it came out of nowhere, to be honest. And I was really surprised because I was doing all the right things. So for me, looking at body identical natural hormone replacement was, for me, that is almost like taking a supplement in a way, because, you know, when you take vitamin D is actually a hormone. So you're taking a hormone in a vitamin D supplement. So when you take body identical, molecularly identical estrogen and progesterone, it's almost like a supplement. So for me, it's a very natural treatment. And also my mother has osteoporosis. So I was very, very aware that if I let my estrogen and progesterone drop too much, then I'd be at extra risk of that too. So for me, body identical HRT works really well. But it's not for everybody, understand that, but I'm certainly not against medication.
No. And do you get the body identical HRT from the doctor?
Yeah.
It's prescription.
Yes, although I had to tell the doctor what to.
I was just going to say, you have to specifically ask for that.
In a lot of cases, yes. Unfortunately, you know, unless you're going to a specific menopause clinic or a menopause trained doctor, I don't know why they have to be specifically trained, because we are dealing with half the population here that go through this. But many mainstream doctors are general practitioners, and they don't get enough menopause training to understand the difference between all the different HRT brands and the formulas. So for me, it's a question of actually helping women, educating them on what's available, what the differences are, which ones are likely to give you side effects and risks and which are not, and those are the ones we really need to be taking. And if your doctor doesn't understand the difference between them, then, you know, we've got resources that you can take along to your surgery and say, right, you know, these are the ones I want. And often the doctor, and my doctor actually said to me, well, thank you for doing your own research, because I actually didn't know that. So
okay, that's good.
Not all doctors are like that.
No. But it is
finding a you know, an empathetic doctor that, you know, will maybe admit that they don't know all about it. It is, you know, probably your best bet.
And it is, you know, unbelievable the number of women who are going to be going through menopause, perimenopause at any stage, that it's not something that doctors get trained on. It's just, I know often they're there to deal with emergencies, and obviously that isn't an emergency, although it is going to feel like it. If you're not sleeping and you're waking up every half an hour, you're going to feel pretty ill. You're going to feel really, really ill.
It was a massive emergency to me. I tell you, I'm an absolute nightmare on low sleep. You don't want to be around me I haven't got my 7 hours sleep.
Well, that's the same for everyone. Yeah. Isn't it? It'll be different symptoms, and it might be they don't get in a bad mood, but they're just not functioning very well. But nobody's going to cope well if they're not sleeping.
No, and it's an emergency when you can't work to your full potential, when you're not finding joy in life. I mean, you know, this is the stage, Mary, where you talked about earlier, where we should be embracing this new phase. We may have kids leaving home. We may have freedom for the first time in our lives to do whatever we want. And if you haven't got your health, or you're not sleeping, or your mood's out, your brain's foggy, you know, forget it. It's not going to be, you know, you getting to that, you know, golden land of post-menopause.
Well, I mean, that's what happens, isn't it? That we all take our health for granted until it goes, at whatever stage, and maybe it's even just we have a bad cold or something. Yeah. But it's when you're feeling bad
Yeah.
That's when you realize just how important it is to be able to get up and have energy to go and do things, and not be in the position, oh, I'd really love to go and do whatever it is, but I can't be bothered because I can't get off my ass. I'm so tired.
And I think we actually, you know, the more this happens, the longer it goes on, the more we get used to the actual feeling, and we actually forget what it's like to have loads of energy, to be, for your brain to be really sharp, to have sex drive, to feel yourself again and to feel happy. We can forget that because often we put up with it for so long. Yeah. And then it gets to the stage where you actually haven't even got the energy to do something about it. So, you know, we've got to be very aware of that as we go through, and you really jump on things as soon as they start to happen. And, you know, I often, you know, the first thing, one question I ask women actually when I start talking to them is, you know, well, where is your energy from 0 to 10? You know, 10 being Tigger jumping around. Yeah. And I've never, ever got above 8 from women. And I'm like, well, is 8 good enough for you? It might be, but what would your life look like at 10? Yeah. What if we could get you to 10? What would that enable you to do extra, or to feel, or to achieve, or to perform in a different way? And, you know, I don't think that's even in a lot of our mindsets, that we have that optimal health.
I was just going to say, how many women that isn't even something they'd consider. That is, a 10 is so off the scale. Yeah. A lot of them are probably thinking, get me to 5 and I'd be delighted.
Yeah. It's crazy. Yeah.
So explain what happens to us during that whole sort of perimenopause, menopause and post-menopause, which I know that's a number of years. I've just asked you to cover, but very generally, what's going on for all of us?
So as we sort of leave when we leave our reproductive years, we get to around our mid-30s and our ovarian reserve, our eggs start to deplete. So we start to run out of eggs, which means actually that what's happening is we don't ovulate necessarily every month. And this is going to happen at different stages for different women, obviously. But it's around the mid-30s that's going to start to happen, which is obviously why it's harder to get pregnant as you get older. Now, triggers a series of hormone changes. So progesterone dips, because progesterone only gets produced when you ovulate. So if you're skipping ovulation, then you won't get any progesterone. Yeah. So that can go down, and progesterone is your sleep hormone. It helps you sleep. It also is your anti-anxiety hormone, so it helps calm you down. So we can get extra anxiety and extra sleep problems as progesterone dips. The other thing that happens is estrogen starts to fluctuate. So it doesn't go down with progesterone, it goes up and down a lot over the perimenopausal phase, which is from around 35 up until your final period, which is on average in your early 50s. So for that period, which is about 17, 18 years, you can have all sorts of symptoms from fluctuating estrogen, low progesterone. Your thyroid can start to suffer because it just gets a bit wear and tear, but also is affected by stress. Stress itself, the cortisol hormone, can get worse during that time as well, because we're entering that middle age sandwich thing, that we've got all sorts of other things going on. So as our stress levels or stress in our life can increase, our resilience can go down as well. So we get this kind of double whammy, plus the hormone imbalances are causing extra cortisol as well. And if we've got anything else going on in the body, never mind your hormones, then that can add to the stress as well and make things worse. So we've got this kind of chaotic blend of hormone changes going on, where some women can sail through it and they're fine. I'm not saying every woman will go through this, but we think around 80% of women will have some sort of symptoms ranging from kind of mild to debilitative, where they may have to leave work, or it may end up with relationship difficulties or other health issues as well. So it's something that you can't ignore it, and you need to be doing something to help yourself. And the earlier it starts to happen, the more chance you've got of actually getting in there early and rebalancing before you get to the worst of it. And then post-menopause, by the way, I don't want to forget postmenopausal women.
No, I was just going to ask that. Does it all just settle down?
Well, it can do, depending on where your hormones end up settling. So officially, we're postmenopausal a year after your final period, but that can last a while. Mine's been about 3 years of, coming in and out. So a year afterwards, you're officially postmenopausal. Now your hormones can settle well, and you can be fine and not have any more symptoms. But you've got to be very aware of things, of your risk factors at this stage, because postmenopausal, we're at extra risk of heart disease, osteoporosis and dementia, because those are the three things where estrogen is very much needed to make them work properly. So that's your brain, your heart and your bones. Now, many women actually produce enough estrogen postmenopausal toward that, to manage that risk, but many women don't. Even if you're symptomatic or not, it's worth getting your hormones checked postmenopausally to make sure you're not at extra risk of those things. Because if you are too low, unfortunately, those are the three big killers. So
oh wow.
we
And you
need
can
to be
just
aware of
ask your
that.
doctor to do that. Can you
can get blood tests. You can get blood tests, although they are sometimes hit and miss whether your doctor will do that for you. Of course, you know, we do private testing, which is we do it in the urine, which is over a 24-hour period. It's way better than bloods, because then we can check your whole how your hormones are behaving over a whole day rather than just a snapshot. But also we can check how your estrogen's working, all three of your estrogens. We tend to think of only one, but we've got three. And we need to see whether the body is compensating with the reduction in estradiol with the other two estrogens, and we see how they're working through the liver. So if you've got a struggling liver, for instance, and it's not detoxifying your estrogen, that estrogen will go back round again and then cause extra symptoms. And we want that liver to be working properly. So when, you know, I hear a lot of ladies saying to me, oh, I can't handle alcohol anymore, or, you know, I get headaches or whatever, or skin breakouts or something around that. I'm thinking about liver and seeing whether that liver needs a bit of support, because if that liver's not working properly, that estrogen will go around again, and we don't want that. We want it to be properly eliminated.
See, I didn't know that at all. Well, a lot of people aren't going to know that. I also assumed that if you were postmenopausal and you didn't have symptoms, that you were probably nothing to worry about. I just didn't know that you could still be at risk because of the low estrogen.
Yeah, so you may not get symptoms, because not all women get symptoms of low estrogen. But, you know, other symptoms are, it's not just the hot flushes and night sweats you need to be looking for. It's things like brain fog, memory loss, dry skin, dry eyes, joint pain, muscle pain, fatigue, sleep problems, you know, similar symptoms to peri, but more on the dry side. So maybe, you know, vaginal dryness as well, or painful sex, or real joint issues. So where the body needs lubricating, the skin or your inside linings is the lack of estrogen. So you know, particularly those deep lines that people can get as well. And I'm thinking, you know, sometimes I see people and I think, you know, I wonder if they're on estrogen or not, because that skin looks a bit dried out.
So, and what's the answer then if you have got low estrogen? Is it the
well, there are two ways of doing it. One is more effective than the other. So the direct hormone replacement is the most effective, obviously. And like I said, you want to be on the body identical form of estrogen, which is the gel, the patch, or there is now a spray as well. And the body identical progesterone, which is the pill, one pill taken at night. So that's what's available on the NHS, and that will bring your levels up pretty well. Now, if you can't take HRT or you don't want to for any reason, there is some dietary things you can do, like eating some foods that contain plant-like estrogens. They're called phytoestrogen foods, and that's things like organic soy. So you can have tofu, soy milk, soy yogurts. Make sure it's organic and not sweetened. We don't want to be putting sugar in there, or any kind of processed soy either. So make sure it's just basic organic soy products. And things like flax seeds, which also have phytoestrogens in them. So these are foods that can mimic your own estrogen, land on the estrogen receptors, and kind of be an adaptogen. So they can push your levels up or bring them down if needed. So they can be very useful for that. They're not going to be as effective as HRT because they're going to be milder, but they may be enough to push up your estrogen levels to stop you getting risks. So I'd definitely be on those. If you're not on HRT, I'd definitely be looking at phytoestrogens, and you can take them in supplement form as well if you don't like soy, or some people are intolerant to things like that. So you can take isoflavones, which is what you want to be looking at, and you can get them in soy products or supplements or in things like red clover extract are very useful. Things like there's a brand called Promensil, for instance, which is red clover extract. It's a very strong extract, and that can then help with menopausal symptoms. It's been proven in some studies as well.
I'm guessing you need to take proper advice about this rather than
you
decide
can't just
you're going to go out and and so will you need to take, is the advice you take them forever? Because once your estrogen is low, it's not going to come back up naturally.
No, so I would be taking them, you know, with the body identical, they're natural estrogens. So as long as you need hormones, you can take them. There's women in their 90s on them. There's no reason for you to come off the natural ones because they're exactly the same as your own body. So you're just replacing what your body has lost. If you think about the old days, you know, people say, well, why do we need HRT now? Why do we need to replace our hormones? Well, we used to get to 50 and die.
Exactly.
So once we'd had our babies, that was it, you know, that was our usefulness. So these days, you know, obviously life expectancy in our mid 80s, then we're going to need some help with our hormones before we get to that.
So all the concern that there has been in the press about HRT and it can exacerbate breast cancer and lots of other things, that is old-fashioned HRT, is it? Which most people aren't.
It's still being prescribed, that's the thing. So it's synthetic forms of HRT, which is generally the oral form of HRT, and then progestogens, which come in a combined patch or a combined pill. So we've got to just ask or find out for yourself, actually, because asking doesn't always give you the right answers. But finding out for yourself through my site, I've got articles and blogs on my site about this. You just type in HRT and it'll give you all you need to know. But taking that to your doctor and saying, this is the one I want. And yes, any kind of risks and side effects have been associated with the synthetic ones, not the body identical. There's not been a study, as far as I know yet, on the body identical forms of HRT that has any side effects or risks attached to it whatsoever. So you don't need to come off it after a few years. You don't need to worry about extra risks. But, you know, caveat with that is you don't want to be taking a too high a dose also, because that's going to build up in your body. So you want to be careful that you've got the right dose.
So which is why you do need to take proper advice before just going out and, you know.
Yes, but if you can't afford the testing, then, you know, you can just try the body identical, see how you feel symptom wise. But, you know, there's always risks of taking too much of anything, you know, any supplements or hormones, whatever. It's a very complex system. But generally, if your symptoms improve, then you're probably on the right track. You've just got to be careful you're not taking too much, because obviously too much estrogen, you'll get into the realms of, you know, being proliferative and cancer risk and all that stuff.
So is the suggestion you then get tested, continue to get tested going forward on a regular basis?
And just very much monitor your symptoms. I mean, obviously I'd like to get every woman tested every single year, because that's the level of support I think women need and deserve, but that's not available. So unless you can afford that, obviously. But generally you just watch your symptoms and just manage those, and, you know, if things start to change, you may need to go back and adjust things. But just keep an eye and monitor things as you go through.
It's a bit of a minefield, isn't it, for all of us to work out what's right, which is why, thank goodness, there's the likes of you specialising in this.
And there's many more nutritionists specialising in this now as well. I mean, I train nutritionists as well, so there are lots of really skillful practitioners out there that can help. So do not ever feel like you're on your own or you don't know where to turn, because just even going on my website, you'll find a lot of information there for free. I've got a hormone balancing guide, which you can just download and just get the basics. Because, you know, while we're talking about HRT, we're also, that's just replacing estrogen and progesterone. We've got over 100 hormones in our body. So we can only, you know, if we've got any of those other ones are out of balance, then HRT is not actually going to help that. So you want to be looking at your cortisol, your thyroid, your insulin, and all the other hormones that we have running around that can get out of balance as we get older. And that's where diet and lifestyle and supplements come in. So you need, even if you're taking HRT, you need to be still doing the basics. You still need to be giving your hormones all their nutrients. You still need to be managing your stress, because if you're stressed out and your cortisol's out of balance, then HRT is not actually going to help you very much.
No, exactly. I mean, no pill is going to do things for you if you're not doing everything else to help yourself at the same time.
Yeah.
And actually, it's so important, isn't it? Bearing in mind, I haven't looked it up. Actually, I think I looked it up the other day for something else. But, you know, the age we're going to all live till now, females live longer than men. We're going to live, someone in their 50s now, without any medical condition, is probably going to live till 90, 92, you know, that's a long time.
Yeah.
Isn't it? So if we all want to be nice and fit and healthy for as long as possible, it's just so important to know all this stuff.
Yeah, and I think when you're, you know, when you're young, pre-40, you think you're kind of invincible, don't you? I don't know. There's some sort of you can eat and drink what you want, you can do what you like. Very rarely you're going to have any consequences for that. But post 40, post 50, these things are going to have consequences. Whether they're your daily, how you feel on a daily basis, whether you have symptoms or not, or whether it's an increased risk of something as you get older. You know, what you do, what you eat, how you move, what you're taking will have consequences.
Yeah.
So for most of us, you know, there's the lucky few that get away with it, but for many of us, we need to be eating lots of nutrients, because, you know, our guts are suffering too these days with, you know, they don't quite absorb as well as they used to. So we may be on the best diet in the world. If we're not absorbing those nutrients, we're going to have symptoms. So there's lots of things we need to be thinking about, but not obsessing about, but just making sure that you're eating a nutrient dense diet with the minimal amount of processed foods, you know. And I talk a lot about, you know, the 80-20 rule, 80% of which I'm a big fan of, because I like my 20%, believe me.
Yeah.
You know, my 20% of treats now and then, you know, I usually have at the weekend, and the week for me is usually pretty good, healthy, you know, minimal alcohol, trying to drink plenty of water, because that's something as well we forget to do as we get older. And then the weekend I can let go a little bit and not obsess too much, and not that I obsess too much anyway, but just have a break and you know, go out and socialize. And because life's there to live and we want to enjoy ourselves, we don't want any deprivation, we don't want to feel like we're not enjoying the best of life, but at the same time we've got to be really careful about our health and making sure we're getting those nutrients in and feeling better. You know, if I certainly know, if I've had a few days that I've just been on holiday and come back and known that I've been on holiday, because, you know, my 20% crept up to about 50%. And I felt sluggish, I felt lethargic, I didn't have energy. My brain wasn't working as well.
You can notice it, can't you? If you're tuning into your body, you can really notice what foods work for you and what foods don't. And the whole 80-20 rule is really sensible, because who wants to go out with their friends and say no to everything that's on the menu because it's not got lots of ticks next to it, you know? It's about balance, isn't it?
It is, unless of course, you know, you've got an intolerance or something like that. But for most people, you know, you can let go a little bit and have a few treats here and there and not worry too much. It's not going to upset the balance if it's only 20%.
And actually, whilst you were talking, the thing that popped into my head is, we all bring our car to the garage for a bit of a service, an MOT each year. We spend however much it costs, because actually we want to know that when we get in our car to do a journey, we want to feel pretty confident our car's going to get us there. And yet we just assume that our body is just going to keep going no matter what rubbish we do to it and how many nights we don't sleep and etc. It's interesting as to why is it not more common for, or maybe it will be, for us all to say, I'm going to go and have a proper checkup each year. You know, and I don't mean go to the doctor and the doctor take your heart rate or your blood pressure, because that happens to lots of people. I'm talking about, you know, like a proper women's checkup. Like, I'm wondering why that isn't common.
Because we've never had that before, Mary. So we've always relied on our doctors to do that for us. And we're now understanding much more about the human body, especially, you know, the changes that women go through, which has never been really recognized before. And now we're understanding that actually we need fine tuning, not just, you know, your heart, your blood pressure's all right, you can go. You know, we need much more attention on what's happening to us, because things can easily go wrong if we don't keep an eye on it. And that's the problem. We've always waited for something to go wrong before we actually go and get help. And I think those days are changing. I actually think people are much more of a preventative mindset now. Especially this past year with COVID and the pandemic, I think people have really understood that, you know, your health is absolutely paramount. We've got to look after it. We've only got one body. It's there for life. if you don't look after it, it's not going to be able to do, it's not going to do what you want it to do and what your brain wants it to do.
Absolutely. And even touch wood for those who weren't impacted by COVID, and I'm going to touch wood, I was very lucky I wasn't, and nobody I know was. Yes. But it's made us all think, hasn't it, about what if I get ill? You know, all of a sudden we've all become so much more aware of how you could get ill out of nowhere and be pretty ill.
Yeah.
For a long time.
And and you know, the vaccine has come along, and that's fair enough, but you know, there's been very little talk about the things that you can do naturally to help boost your immune or support your immune system. Things like vitamin D levels, vitamin C, making sure you're eating those vegetables, they're all going to support your immune system. Managing your stress, although that's been obviously exacerbated during this whole time, but that stress, cortisol, weakens your immune system. You know, all these things have an impact. It's not just about getting a vaccine and thinking you're okay. Exactly. We've got to be looking after everything else, because that's just COVID. You know, we've got all these other things that we could be falling to. So getting that immune system working for you is really important, and that's lots of different. It's actually very similar to keeping your hormones balanced. It's doing all the right things. Yeah. And making sure you're moving as well, but not too much, because that stresses you out.
And do you, so you said it was what, like 13 years ago, or however, that sort of period, you went to the doctor and you got given Prozac and realized you needed to go and research for yourself. I'm guessing over that period of time, things have really improved. And if you were in that situation now, you'd be able to go online and find an awful lot more information than you did at the time. Is that right? There's
absolutely. You know, when I first started out, I think I was the only person specializing in women's hormones back then in terms of a nutritional point of view. And now there's lots and lots of us, which is amazing. Lots more awareness around menopause is just literally the hot topic at the moment. And so that's a good thing. However, it can be a bit confusing and overwhelming when you go onto Google and your Facebook. Or it's like it's the opposite, isn't it? I had no information, and now there's so much information. You're not quite sure who to trust or what to believe, or you know, who to follow. So again, you know, it's hard to know, but you know, I think you need to be looking for people that have researched, have some letters after their name, have you know, done some proper training, and not just somebody who's just decided they're going to tell you what menopause is.
And how would we know? So how would I know if I looked up, because I don't even know what letters you got after your name, and I wouldn't know what they mean anyway. Exactly, what's the best way then, that if I went on the website and I saw, you know, Sally Jones is a hormone expert, how would I know whether she really knew what she was talking about?
Well, yeah, really good question, actually, because actually, you know, unless you're a doctor, none of the other things are regulated. So even the nutrition profession, we're not regulated. So anyone can do a course online and say they're a nutritionist, which is ridiculously scary, because after 4 years study, I know what's involved in the study. And for somebody to do a week or a 6-week course or something and then start to tell people what supplements to take, it fries my mind. I'm like, no, because that's dangerous. So, you know, you're looking at, obviously doctors are doctors, so they, you know, if they've studied this area, and so, you know, obviously they know what they're talking about. And then I think in terms of nutrition and natural support, you know, there's some big colleges that I'd want to be looking for someone who's a member of BANT or CNHC, which are the two complementary nutrition organizations. So as long as they've got membership of that, they've gone through the hoops in terms of that. And if they're not, then I would steer clear, because no amount of, you know, online training is going to get them educated enough to know to support you safely.
And that, I suppose that's part of the problem, isn't it? That because the whole perimenopause, menopause is becoming a bit of a buzzword at the minute, there may well be a lot of people coming into it thinking, oh, I've done my weekend course and now I'm an expert, I can go and advise all these women. And like I said, that's probably more dangerous than not doing anything.
It is when you're talking, I mean, obviously food, you know, as long as the diet's not too extreme, you could try that, but you're going to know yourself, you know, if you're listening to your body, whether it's good for you or not. Because I think, you know, there is no one size fits all diet either. There's this myth that there's a diet that you need to do for everybody. And that's just absolute rubbish, because we're all so individual. We all metabolize differently. We all have different genetics. And, you know, different tolerances to food. So putting someone on one generic diet is, you know, I mean, I have an online program, but it's a general guide. It's not saying you need to have this and this. Yeah, so just be wary of those kind of miracle diets, and anyone advising you on supplements that is not a nutritionist or a doctor, I'd be very wary of.
Yeah. And if we were to think, I don't know, 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line, and things had really, really improved in women's health, particularly the whole menopause area, what would you like to see?
Oh, goodness. Personally, I'd like to see every GP properly trained on what menopause is and what the best treatment in terms of prescriptions are. That would be amazing, because that would cover the majority of the population then. And it wouldn't be restricted then just to people that could afford to come to private practitioners like me and get proper tests done. I'd love to see the tests that we do available on the NHS. That would be incredible, although that would hurt my business, of course. But I actually think that they should be accessible to everyone, because they are amazing and they give us so much information. Although I'm not sure the doctors would know exactly, you know, what to do to support your liver or whatever without medication. But that would be great. More nutrition training for doctors as well, because they literally have, I think, half a day or something. But, you know, actually, what I would like to see more than anything is education for women around their own bodies, around their health, what's happening to them. Because once you're educated, you know, you can then have some control back in terms of what to do.
Exactly.
Because, you know, once you know, that's half the battle. So, I mean, we're doing our best to educate women from our point of view. And I think, you know, as long as that keeps improving and more people are doing that, then in 5 years' time, we should all be more educated. We should all be more empowered, and we should all be suffering less. That's my hope.
That would be good. That would be really good. And also, it's not even an unreasonable wish at all, is it? Your wish is to help women who are going through a very natural process, to help them feel better.
Yeah, and be healthier than they ever did, to be honest, and, you know, really reach their potential in their health. You know, like you say, we often settle for 5 or 6 or 7 out of 10. Let's get ourselves to 10. See what we could actually achieve as a collective if we were 10 out of 10 with our health.
Wouldn't that be marvelous? Amazing. Yeah, all these women, you know, 40, 50, 60 plus, all operating at 10 out of 10. My goodness.
We'd be running the world, Mary, that's for sure.
Wow.
Wouldn't the world be a better place?
Exactly. Wouldn't that be good? So if you wanted to give, say, one piece of advice, one takeaway to someone listening to this who's not in great shape for whatever reason, you know, she's not in great shape. I mean, she's not feeling healthy, whether she's pre-menopause, post-menopause, whatever it is, she's one of these women who are low on that scale, who would adore to be a 5 out of 10 even. What would your advice be to her?
I'd say don't leave it any longer. Do not continue to put up with that level of health. You don't deserve it. The world deserves a better you. And, you know, if you don't feel particularly worth it, you are. And if you have such low energy that you can't even do anything about it, then just get help, because that person, we will help you to get your energy levels back before you can then start looking. You can't change anything if your energy is not there. So our priority would be to get your energy back, and then you've got the motivation and the energy to go and make changes in your life that are more sustainable. But we've got tips and tricks to get your energy back, so then you can actually start to look further afield and start to look at all those other health issues. But energy is something that, you know, you absolutely need.
Oh, absolutely.
So get help. Don't put up with it any longer than you need to. You are worth getting that support, and if it means investing a little bit, then goodness me, you'd spend that money on your kids, you'd spend it on your car, you'd spend it on your hair and your nails.
Yeah, absolutely.
Spend it on your health, because that's the one investment you'll never regret.
Absolutely. Nikki, it's really been fantastic talking to you. I've loved it. I've learned so much. So for someone listening in and wants to understand more about your services, what you offer, etc., what's the best place for them to be able to get in touch with you?
The best place is go straight to the website, happyhormonesforlife.com. On the front of the website, you've got a button called Start Here. Literally click that. You'll get all the free resources that we offer. You'll get the sort of low cost things like my book and the online course. And then you'll get a section of how to contact us to work with us or get testing done. All hopefully something for everybody at whatever level you're at.
And I'm guessing someone who doesn't know what's right for them, they can have a conversation with you to say, look, you know, what do I want to do?
Absolutely. We've got a booklet that we send out. Yeah. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Yeah. So brilliant. I'm going to put your details in the comment section below. So anyone who didn't quite hear it, it's going to be there. If you're listening to this, make sure you are signed up, because there are 5 of these calls, fantastic information like here. So if you're listening to this partway through the week, if you sign up, you're going to get all the previous ones as well, and any future ones coming along. So Nikki, thank you so much for all that information. It's been wonderful. Thank you.
You're welcome, Mary. Thanks for asking me.